Good morning again. We just had a meeting a couple of days ago for a coffee chat, and it had to do with success. I know we've covered this topic a couple of times before, but at our last coffee chat there was a little discussion that went on briefly about, there was a comment made on success, and somebody made another comment that success is something that's individually defined, you might say, or one person's success is quite different than, our idea of success is quite different than another's in that respect. And with that little exchange, the suggestion was made that why don't we talk about this? So we did, and we had a great discussion. There's probably about 15 of us there, and a lot of ideas exchanged. When I started to look at this idea of success, I realized there are different ideas of it, or definitions, you might say. The basic definition of success, or in its origin, is that of the term succession, or like a chain of events. We've all heard the use of the word in terms of, when the king dies, the heir succeeds the throne. It's like when something happens here, something else happens over here. One action leads to a certain result, in other words. In that aspect of the word, we are always successful, I guess you could say, because we're always getting results which are related to our actions. The question is, are these successes that we want, really? And Earl Nightingale, who was one of the pioneers in audio teaching, he had this very interesting perspective of success, because he said that success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal or goal. There's a little audio that was done, published back in the 50s or something like that, when he first got started, and it's called something like the Strangest Secret. It's an interesting listen. You could just type it into YouTube and listen to it. And he talks about in there about how if you're a mother raising your children and you're doing the best you can, in that doing you are successful. If you are in a certain trade and you're progressing in the way that you want to, in that progression you are successful, and so on. So he sort of saw the success as the journey, which relates back to the origin of the word, the chain of events. That is what success is. But either way, as you can see in both of these definitions, both the origin and the Earl Nightingale one, what we see is we see in the chain there are actions being taken. King dying, it's an action, right? Mother working with her children, actions. Equaling out to results. There's always something that follows or succeeds the actions taken in both cases. So I thought it was worthwhile to look at these ideas. But before I go on, we did go around the room, and I did take some notes. I wish I had them with me. Didn't bring them with me. Oh, I did bring them with me. We went around the room at the beginning, and in this case, instead of having a talking stick, forgot the talking stick, we had a talking hammer. Perhaps it was accidental, but the hammer kind of exemplified the idea of success. It's very much of an action item, isn't it? We had, what was interesting was one of the guys actually, he'd just picked up a book by Brett Wilson, who was one of the guys on Dragon's Den, and he'd written a book recently called Redefining Success. The gentleman who brought the book to the discussion, he talked about how in there Brett had talked about in his success, in his financial success, he lost a lot of other things, like his family got messed up and such. So he had successes that he maybe didn't want, which was, and so another person mentioned in there, when we went around, everybody had a chance with the hammer to make a comment as to what success is. One guy mentioned something about balance shortly after the Brett Wilson comment, because if we succeed in one area, in an aspect that we want, but yet in so doing, we destroy another aspect of our lives. Not necessarily destroy, but we mess it up so that we don't have the success that we want in that area. Then what's the point of it all in terms of the aggregate of it? So the idea was balance. Somebody mentioned that success is scary. Somebody mentioned that success follows the seed of thought. So if we look at where we are in our success, if we could, and we can't always, we don't always, for example, but there was a seed at one point, just like when we want to grow a garden, we put seeds down, and then because of those seeds down, there is a succession of events, and then eventually we have the crop, right? Somebody mentioned that success is the result of hard work. And it is individual, of course. That's a lot of people mentioned. Somebody mentioned that success is really defined by one's perception. And in the case of this guy mentioning, he said that success to him was inner calm. There was a mention of happiness is what success is, accepting who I am. Let's see what else there was. But what I would say is, a lot of us were probably in the quote-unquote middle age of our lives. And a lot of the idea was success is something that had to be internalized. In other words, whatever we succeed in externally, if we can find meaning in it. And probably that's along the lines of what Brett Williams is talking about too. Or Brett Wilson was talking about too, although I haven't read the book. Redefining success. For so long, success was about accumulation of external things, and now there are many people who are seeing it otherwise. So those are the comments of others, and I'll just go through some of the things that I shared too. But we had a long discussion. It went on way past. They actually had to kick us out of the coffee shop. It went on so long, and I don't think hardly anybody left. So, coming back to what Earl Nightingale said, which I thought was pretty profound, the progressive realization of a worthy ideal or goal. I thought the key word in there, one of the key words anyways, is this word, worthy. Because when we see something as worthy, it becomes worth the cost. There's always a cost to everything, right? Whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's resources or attention, all that sort of thing. Those are all costs. But if something is worthy of our attention, really worthy, and the cost is not as significant, even if it's the same amount of material cost as something else. If one is worthy and one is not, then one becomes worthwhile. It's probably worthwhile, and worth is the same as the word worthy, actually. Now, for me, if I ask myself, how do I check if something is worthy? I use the term, or have recently used the term, desirous vision. If there is enough desire for it, and the vision is clear, and there's value for it, and it's an ideal, and all that comes together, it's an ideal, something that's really wanted in life, and the desire is strong enough, and that can be clearly seen, then it becomes worthy. I'll just use a little example. Say, for example, there's a guy who wants to have a perfect family. Now, hopefully he'd realize there's no such thing, because what's perfect, eh? Well, by his own definition, of course. This would be something like an ideal. It's not specific, it's rather general. Within that ideal, then, he could select goals. And it's interesting that in Earl Nightingale's definition there, he had worthy, ideal, or goal. So they're somewhat a little bit different. The goal is kind of like the stepping stones that help to flesh out the ideal, if you will. So within this ideal of this improved family anyways, he would select goals, or could select goals that would help him move towards that. For example, he might have had a book that he picked up a long time ago, never took the time to read. It was about improving relationships. So he could set a goal. That's something very specific, right? Read the book, take some notes, take some ideas out of those, take the time to implement them in his life, and as a result, improve his relationship skills. In so doing, he moves a little bit closer to the ideal, the desirous vision of the ideal. So as you can see in this example, succession of events, right? It needs desirous vision, ideally. And it needs action so that there can be an equaling out in that direction. What could be missing then? It sounds pretty straightforward, right? Why can't we all be successful? I would say what's missing is something that gets us to take consistent or / meaningful action. Because we can have all these ideals, but if we're not consistently working towards them, then it kind of fizzles out, right? Allow me to share with you a story which might help us to see what is missing and how we could help ourselves, in other words. Years ago, when I say years ago, 20 years ago, something like that, there was a guy called Gary Halbert. He's since passed away, and he was known as a marketing guru in the marketing industry. Such was the case that some of the largest marketing firms and agencies and marketing individuals would hire this guy for large sums of money to help them establish their ad campaigns. And he was known as the man responsible for the largest mail order campaign in history in terms of numbers and in profits. If you remember back in the 70s, there were these mail order pieces that would come to us in the mail, and it was all about a coat of arms. So it would be personalized to the name, the family name of those who own the mailbox, basically. An offer to sell various different things with your coat of arms. Most European names come with a coat of arms. So he would sell plaques and all that sort of thing, and it was very successful. Sold millions and millions and millions of dollars. As a result of his profession and the way he studied and so on, he was a kind of a master of human psychology, and why people buy what they buy. And he boiled things down to 3 reasons why people buy what they buy. And this relates to us in terms of why we are or why we're not successful. For the simple reason that we have to become our own best customers for what we want in our successes in life. So what he's talking about here, Gary Halbert, appears to be, and it is in his case, about customers over there and why they're not buying what I'm trying to sell them. But we can relate what he's saying to ourselves and why we at times do not buy into our own sales pitch. The first thing that he said, first of three, is that a customer must want the product. Now this may sound overly simplified, but it's obvious, isn't it? It was back in the day when there wasn't so much political correctness. But what he would say, to make the point, is there's no sense trying to sell ice to Eskimos. Once again, overly simplified, but obviously that's, and a lot of times we're trying to sell ourselves something that we don't want deep down inside. It's something that's been, we think we want because we're deluding ourselves. We're trying to win approval perhaps of others. So we're trying to sell ourselves something that we think others think that we want, or something like that, or various different things. But it's not something that's really deep within us. Number two, customer must want to pay the price. Oh, let me step back for a minute. Number one. Number one, that would relate to wanting the product, would relate to our desirous vision. Right? Hold that for a minute. Number two, customer must want to pay the price. That would relate to us whether it's worthy of our cost, the cost incurred by us. And Gary would use the example of, he used to say, I could go down the street with a brand new Ferrari, offering to give that Ferrari away for free, and there'd be many takers. Here's the keys, brand new Ferrari. People will take it. But then he'd turn around and say, but few are willing to pay the $200,000 price tag for that Ferrari. It's not worthy enough. It's not worth enough in the impression of most to give that. And that is the case with us very often, is our ideals, because they're not really wanted deep down inside. We haven't clarified what is meaningful for us. We're always living through the eyes of others, perhaps, or societies, or programs running within us. And therefore the result is they're not worthy enough for us. But once we have that, and those can be established, both in sales, what he's talking about, those two things, whether it's wanted and the price, those can be established. The third one he talked about, he used to call it the biggest monkey in the bag, for the simple reason that in his experience it was the most challenging thing to actually achieve. And what that was believability. He would say that it doesn't matter how good a product is that I'm selling. It doesn't matter how good I know it is as a salesman. It doesn't matter how great of a deal I know it is as a salesman. If the customer doesn't believe it, doesn't trust, thinks that it's a scam, and in some way doesn't believe me, there is no sale. That's the thing to be overcome. And we can relate that all to ourselves too. Believability. If we do not believe that it is possible for us to be successful, if we do not believe that we have what it takes, I would take that a step farther. I would use the word faith in some cases, and not in a religious sense here, but in a stronger sense of the word belief. It's like a belief with certainty. Do we have faith in ourselves? Do we have faith in what we're doing? When we have that, when we have all three, there is a moving forward. When we believe our own pitch, essentially. In conclusion then, I would say that success truly is progressive results towards ideals and goals within those ideals, where those goals and ideals are indeed desired, visioned, clearly see them in some way, and experience them in the vision. We've gone through this before. They are worthy of the cost we must go through to get them. And they are believable. We have faith in ourselves and so on. All of this equals out to the progressive realization of what it is that we want in life, which is true success, as I see it. Thank you for listening, and please feel free to leave your comments. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye for now.